Hi, this is Donna from Olivia and Recreate. I'm live again. Okay, I know in the video last week I said I was going to be live every day and I haven't been able to do that yet, but I'm working on it and I'm going to start being live every day from this time or slightly before this, 5:30 UK time, which is I think Eastern Standard Time, about 3:30 in the afternoon. And you can work out, you'll have to work out the rest, do the time clock, the world clock thing. Okay, so I talked a little bit about doing a batting last time, and I was a little bit all over the place, so I thought I wanted to really show you how to do this because most of you who are my followers, you followed me because I did a tutorial on how to make a pot holder, and I thought rather than just waving the batting around and saying you just sew it together, I thought I would show you in more detail. So that's why the name of this video is how to make a Franken-batting, because it's kind of a Frankenstein batting. Now, I'm not sure if you can see this, but if we do close up, this is zigzagged stitching, right? So you can see these tiny little pieces. This is about the size of the piece that you would use if we were going to do my pot holder tutorial, which you can see on my channel. And a lot of you have used it. Thanks very much. But this is about the size you would need for that. And I've done quite a lot of that. But the other day, I got a little bee in my bonnet, as you do. And I decided I wanted to make a sort of an impromptu design wall, because I have a big design wall in my new sewing room. And no, we're not going to show it to you today. You'll see it tomorrow's video because I'll be back over in front of the design wall tomorrow. But I have a big design wall, but it's all covered in a big project that I've been working on for a while. And in the meantime, I've been doing the Gypsy wife quilt along on Instagram. And I've been having trouble deciding which fabrics to use because I wasn't sure about where the blocks go together. So if you want to look over here, I created behind me, here's what I made earlier. I created this impromptu design wall. Okay, so you can see it's huge. It goes all the way to the ceiling, and it's about 60 inches wide, okay? And I created this, and it's actually stapled to the wall, people. I tried to command strip it, but that did not work. I stapled it. No, just pull those suckers out. And it's a big stapler. It's not just like a normal desk stapler. Anyway, what impressed me was from a bunch of little scraps, tiny little scraps, you can make such a huge thing, right? As a whole design wall. Now, and I even have this much left over, which I'm going to add to it, and I won't stand up and show you, but this is like almost the height of me, and it's big. But you can see it's made from tiny little pieces. And I'll show you some here. You know how if you make a quilt, you always make it wider. You always do the backing and the batting wider than the quilt quite a bit, so that you can, sorry, I realized I wasn't looking at you. You always make it quite a bit wider, a good 4 inches or so, to account for, shrinkage and that sort of stuff when you're quilting. And then you just cut all this off after. Well, I made this whole design wall mostly from strips left over like this. And I want to show you how to do that, okay? And then stick around to the end, because after I show you how to do this, I'm also going to talk to you a little bit about some of my musings and goings on in my noggin, because when I started thinking about how these tiny little things get pieced together to make such a huge thing, just like a quilt, right? Lots of tiny little pieces that get pieced together to make a huge thing. I started thinking about how that applies to our life as well, and so the moments of our life. And so I want to give you some action tips and some ideas about the moments of our life and how we can change those. Okay, so the first thing is, if you've got a machine, a smaller machine like I do, I meant to get it out, but sorry, I forgot. If you have just a normal multi-purpose sewing machine, you probably don't have to worry about it. You probably have the plate that the needle goes into, and I don't know if you can see this. I hope you can see this. The plate that the needle goes into is wide like that. Yeah, the normal plate. You wouldn't change it. This machine has 2 plates. The one that I normally use when I'm piecing just has a tiny little hole there in the center for the needle to go up and down. And I use that because if I'm piecing tiny little pieces together, if I use this wide plate with the wide opening, what ends up happening sometimes is the little tiny pieces of the get pulled down in there and get stuck when I'm trying to do my piecing together. So this is not my normal plate, and if this is not your normal plate either, if you have a machine like this, I'm just going to show you really quickly how easy it is to change. So on mine, it has a little circle at the top there, so I know it's the top right. I normally use this guide, and this is a guide that makes sure that I have nice scant 1/4 inch seams, assuming I push the fabric through straight, which is a big assumption. I've already unscrewed this and taken off, so you don't have to watch me do that. This plate just pops up like that. Oops, I forgot. I'm supposed to drop my feed dogs. My sewing machine guy would be very sad to see me. Okay, so you can see there's the tiny little hole that the needle normally goes through. This is the bigger hole. This is the one we want, okay? Because we're going to be doing a zigzag stitch. So this just goes straight back down in there. Boom, that's done. Like I said, if you have a smaller sewing machine, you won't need to do that. Now, I also need to change my foot because my foot only has a narrow opening as well. So you can only do pretty much straight stitching with my, sorry, I'm kind of having to get in the way of the camera. So I'm taking the foot off, and I'm using instead this foot that has a wider opening. You can see because we're going to do some zigzag stitching, okay? And that, like that. Now, I have built-in walking foot, which I'm putting on here. You don't really need it. I just sew with it all the time because I can. But if you have it, you can use that. Now, the only thing about this one is, with the hole here, you have to put the thread through the hole, okay? That's the only thing. Now, if you look at the screen here, we're going to change the settings. Normally for a scant 1/4 inch seam, I have my needle moved 2 notches to the right. So I'm going to move my needle back to the center, so it should be in the 0 spot. Then I'm going to change from a straight stitch, which is what I normally do, to a zigzag stitch here. And I'm going to lengthen the stitch, and I'm also going to widen the stitch. Now you're going to have to experiment a little bit with this, and I'll show you what I mean. What you don't want to do is you have to figure out what is the best setting for the weight of batting that you have, because you don't want it to be stitched together too tightly. You don't want the zigzag stitch to be too tight. So sometimes you just have to play around with it a little bit. So you can see here I've just got some 2 tiny little pieces, and I'm not gonna do like I normally do when I sew. I'm not gonna overlap them. I'm just gonna hold them next to one another. Now the other thing I always do, because it just makes life easier, I always have a little scrap here, and I put this scrap under the needle first, and I'm going to start off with that scrap first. Okay, and then once it gets going, I'm going to take the 2 pieces of batting and I'm going to squish them together. I'm going to put the crack where they're squished together in the nicest possible way, right on the line here that shows the middle of my foot, my sewing machine foot. And then I'm just going to start stitching. Right, and I'm going to stitch straight from that scrap, my leader there, it's called a leader, onto this. Now my only job here, I'm not looking at the needle. I don't want to get mesmerized by the needle, because then everything will go skew-if. What I want to do is keep my eye on this point here, and I just make sure that I'm holding this together very gently and sort of pushing it forward a little bit, and keeping this crack, as it were, on this, matching up with this line. That's all you want to do. It's that simple. Now, what happens if you're like me and you start to daydream and you go, oops, I made a mistake. Oh, I didn't mean to make that much of a mistake. Oops, I made a mistake. And now when I get to the end, I realize, I'm going to cut it and show you. What if you realize you've got a hole in there? No problemo. No problemo. All you have to do, because the zigzag stitch, you don't even really have to back stitch. You just go back, cut it, pick it up, go back, and just go right back over it again, okay? And you wouldn't even have to, if you do a really big long piece like I did for the batting wall, you don't even have to go back all the way. You don't have to restitch the whole length, right? When you get through stitching that one tiny little bit, then you can just cut and stop. okay? And it'll stay. It won't, you know, I don't know if you're newer to sewing, you may not know that, you know, zigzag stitching will hold everything, right? It won't come undone. So this is all you need to do. And what I did, this is all you need to do to sew it together. And you just keep going down like this. Now, you don't even need to cut them off into even pieces and then sew another piece on the end here, right? What you can do is you can just take another piece like this. This is why I love it. It's so cool. You can just do that, and you can lift your foot up, your sewing machine foot up, and you're gonna go over this bit sideways here. It's all gone a bit Pete Tong at the moment. Hold on. All right, so we're gonna cut that, and then I made a little mistake because I turned that corner very poorly. So we're gonna just redo that. Sorry, it's hard to do this on live on the camera. When you're just on your own, it's much easier. And then I'm just gonna go back and start sewing these two pieces together, right? So you don't even need to cut them off and make them even. You don't have to worry about any of that like you do normally with fabric. I'm just gonna zoom down here to show you the end results. Zoom. Okay, so if what I actually did when I was working on this is I laid out all my pieces. I laid out all my pieces on my sewing table and figured out what pieces would fit where. So once I did that, I knew that I would have this side piece to add first. And so I might have added the side piece first, and then I could plan it so that I would just go in here and go down there, or go in here and go down there and then come back down there. You can plan it all out. The one thing I would say is this is why you would want to experiment a little bit with the settings of your machine. This is a little bit, you can see it's bubbling up. I don't know if you can see that. It's not hanging flat. Can you see it from the side maybe? You can see it's poofing out. So I think it's a little bit tight. You might want to loosen your stitches or loosen your tension a little bit. You just have to play or make the stitches wider. So you could either loosen them. So instead of 230, I might loosen this down to, I might loosen this up to like a 3.0 stitch or a 4.0 stitch. You can make the stitch bigger, and you can also make the stitch wider, a little bit wider, because that will loosen this up as well. Ideally, you would want it to lay flat. But if you look over at this one, you can see I didn't take too much time with that. And some of them are a little bit wobbly, but the bits where it's not wobbly, it's smoother. So it still works even if it is wobbly. I'm quite slapdash when it comes to this sort of stuff. I think there were also some wobbly bits because some of the different, all of these are basically sort of cotton type fabric, cotton type wadding, or batting, but some of the batting had a slightly different weight than others. For example, I usually now use wool, but I would never put wool batting together with this cotton batting because the weight is just too different. So you can see this one, for example, is wool, and it's actually stitched together really nicely and is quite nice and flat, even though the stitches are quite small. They're very narrow and they're very tight. But so it doesn't wobble as much as this one was. So I would never, though. You could try it, but I would think even for a design wall, you might not have great results if you put together like a polyester or a wool one like this and a cotton one. I think that the weight of the fabrics is just too different, and that you wouldn't get super ideal. So that's pretty much it. I felt like last time in the last video I was just sort of waving it around and saying, oh, you just sew it together, and I wanted to make sure that I showed you how to change the settings and how to do that. And I also wanted to share with you a little bit. I'm gonna have a drink because I'm a little bit thirsty, because I am a little bit nervous about talking to you live on YouTube. Although I suspect a lot of you will be watching this later. So anyway, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about what it made me think about when I started thinking, I know about, sewing so many small pieces into such a big thing, and especially, and I think we do that for quilts, obviously. But quilts are made of precious fabric, Quilts normally, that's fabric that we really love and it's all bright colors. This is made of stuff that normally we would just throw away. And it reminded me, I think, of the moments of our life, because we focus on all the really big stuff, right? We focus on the day we got married, the day our kids were born, the day we started a new school, all the really big moments. And we think that that's what really defines our lives. But actually, so many of those moments, we have millions and millions of moments in our lives, so many more than just those big days. And how we go through those millions of moments, a lot of which we just think of as throwaway, like these old bits of batting from the edges of the quilt. We think of those as kind of throwaway, Oh, it's just an ordinary Monday. I'm just doing all the other normal stuff. But actually, how we feel about our life. We think of our life in terms of a success. Do we feel our life as a success? Or do we feel happy in our life and in the way our life is going? How we feel about our life is really affected a great deal by all those small moments, okay? And I was thinking how I could share. I wanted to share with you a couple of stories about how I actually used the chance to those small moments. I made changes to those small moments because I wasn't really happy with how my life was going. And I made changes in a small way. This is the other thing. Because we think of big things, right? Because we think of big defining moments like, the cameraman has a finger in front of has just decided to take a new angle and has a finger in front of the lens. So because we think of those, we tend to think of big moments are the most important things in our life, I've always said. But because we think of those big things, we think if we want to change our lives, we have to do big stuff, ginormous stuff, right? We think, a few years ago, I was like, I need to lose some weight. I'd put on a little bit of weight, and I thought I had to, and then we end up not. I ended up not, doing anything because it's so huge, right? It's overwhelming. First I have to get the kid. I need new running shoes, and and then I got to find a place to run, or I need to, join a gym, and it's so expensive, and everyone will laugh at me because I'm not it just goes on and on. There's all kinds of excuses in all kinds of ways because it's such a big thing, right? Well, a few years ago, you may be hearing some little pitter-patter of little paws on the floor here. A few years ago, I got this gorgeous little Poochie Poo who came to live with me. I know, sweetie, come on. And she's a walker. Let me tell you, she's teeny, but she's a walker. And one time when I wasn't feeling well, I got my oldest to give her a walk. And she said, Mom, how do you even walk this dog? Because at that time I was so sedentary. I barely ever walked, right? And I had put on a huge amount of weight at that time. And like I said, I'd used all those excuses. I'm not going to exercise, whatever. So it's just too much hassle and I have to do too much stuff. Well, I got a dog, and now she needed a little walk every day. She doesn't need to walk far, and I don't have to walk fast. It's not like I was going to be, running a marathon or anything. She just needed to walk every day. So I started walking a little while with her every day, right? We just do a little amble in our neighborhood every day. Well, the first few weeks, I tell you what, my legs were killing me. But eventually, after I started walking with her every day, I started walking a little bit faster, right? She used to kind of pull me on the lead, and I originally trained her. I was like pulling back on her, saying, wait, and trained her to walk slower. But then after I started walking for a while, I started getting a little bit fitter. And then I started being able to, I thought, I'll just speed up a bit. This is a tiny little thing, people. I cannot emphasize to you how tiny this is. First of all, it was after months of just ambling around every day. But second of all, it was just, I know, instead of making her slow down, I'm going to speed up a little bit. And I started getting fitter. And actually, I can't tell you how much weight I lost because I never weigh myself. The only way I know that I've lost weight is I can tell by the side how my clothes fit. Eventually, I started walking more and more and losing more weight. And then I signed up. Okay, I know it's crazy, but I actually signed up for a 50K walk in the hills, right? A little, in America we'd call it a hike, but in England they don't call it a hike because there's a marked path, right? It's only a hike in England if you're orienteering. But so I wasn't orienteering, but I was doing proper hiking in the hills. So, and I took Gracie along with me to train. I started a training program, and I went down about 3 or 4 jean sizes. Now, this was all over a period of like 18 months, right, guys? This was not like yesterday. I started yesterday and the next day it happened. It takes time, but over time, committed action over time yields big results. So, okay, I don't want to leave this video without giving you some tips, some action plan, right? So what is one thing you want to change in your life? One small, teeny, or one big thing you want to change, right? You don't like your job, or you don't like your relationship, or you don't like your relationship you have with people in your job, or anything that you want to change in your life. And think about, what do you think you need to do? What do you think you need to do to change it, right? Like your first instinct might be to go nuclear, right? And most people would say if they were going to lose weight, they need to immediately go on a grapefruit diet, right? And they would need grapefruit only, grapefruit and cabbage, and immediately start exercising for an hour a day, 5 days a week, I did that when I was in my 30s. I used to run 5 miles a day, 5 days a week. But what do you think about where you want to end up being, and think about all the steps that you need to get to that place, right? So I wanted to end up being fitter, and I did want to end up losing some weight, but I just took small, teeny, tiny steps. So you want to think about where you are and where you want to end up being, and think about one teeny little step that you could do to make that change, to go towards making that change, right? Maybe you don't like walking outdoors. You like doing an aerobics class or a Pilates class. So one teeny tiny step that you could do is research aerobics classes or Pilates classes, right? Just break it down into small steps and take it in tiny steps at a time. But the main thing about it is commitment and action together. So I'll leave you with one final thing. Another quick little story. A few years ago, I wasn't really thrilled with the way my life was going either. And I thought, what am I missing in my life that I want? So I did this exercise where I meditated and I did some journaling about what I would like to have in my life. And one of the things that came up was dancing. I love to dance. Dancing makes me smile. Not only smile, it makes me laugh out loud. And at the time, I was an empty nester. My kids had gone off to uni, and my relationship had broken up, and I was rattling around this big old house all by myself. And there weren't a lot of chances for me to go out dancing. Let me just put it that way. But you know what I did? You know what I suddenly realized? I could have dancing in my life that very day that I did that exercise, right? I didn't have to buy an outfit, sign up for a salsa classes, because trust me, I did spend a bit of time like researching salsa and tango and that kind of stuff. And then I thought, well, it's too far and blah, blah, blah. But I didn't have to do all those things. You know what? I have a radio in my kitchen, and every day I'm in my kitchen, I'm cooking, and I'm having a little glass of wine, and I thought, I could be dancing in my kitchen by myself. I don't need another person. I don't need to spend money. I don't need to go far and, travel. Back then I lived in London, go all the way across London late at night by myself, blah, blah, blah. So don't overlook the small things, because when you take a bunch of teeny little things and you keep adding more and more teeny little things, and you change the teeny little things to teeny little things that you like, then when you get to the end, you're going to have a whole beautiful quilt. You'll have a wall. You'll have a big, beautiful wall or quilt of a life that you love, that makes you happy every day. Because if you're not happy in the small moments, then your overall life you won't be happy in. So anyway, come back tomorrow. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel and hit the bell. And that way you'll know when I'm live if you happen to be around, and you can come listen to me live, because I've been wanting to make more videos for you, but I've been a little bit nervous about that, and I'll share more of that tomorrow, because I'm going to do my story and share a little bit about my story and how I ended up doing all this stuff. So make sure you subscribe and hit the bell so you can get a notification when I'm live. And I can't wait to see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.